Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. In this video, we're going to talk about turning a Glock MOS into an Agency Arms AOS. If you're curious about more detail on the Agency Arms AOS, which is their modular optic system, you can check out a video I did specifically on that a while ago. It's in the channel, super easy to find. But this video is specifically about something I mentioned in that video, but I didn't have evidence of it, and that is taking a Glock MOS, their modular optic system, and turning it into an Agency AOS, which is something Agency can do to the MOS. Why, you might ask, would I want to turn the MOS into an AOS? And if you're asking that question, you may not have an MOS and have experienced the problems that are common on the Glock MOS. I got a pretty big sample size with this, not only my own personal experience of just shooting MOSs, but also I see a lot of MOSs in classes, especially in my Red Dot instructor course, because that's primarily law enforcement, although I do offer it open enrollment as well. And law enforcement agencies generally buy OEM only products, which means if they have Glock and they want optics, they're going to get the MOS because departments are somewhat hesitant to buy aftermarket options because they worry about warranties and liability and things like that. So the Glock MOS is what we have. First available, I believe, on the Gen 4, and now on the Gen 5. And on the Gen 4, I have a Gen 4 MOS, and I have a Gen 5 MOS, and then I have this Glock 34 MOS. I personally have broken multiple optic mounting plates, the plates you use to mount whatever specific optic you're putting on the gun. A couple of reasons that happens. One is the overall design of the shoe on the MOS slide. It has a linear cruciform to mitigate any kind of windage wiggle on the optic, but it doesn't do a whole lot for actual linear recoil, except just fitment between the two walls, if you will, on that linear shoe. The plate itself is also cast metal. Some of the plates will come right out of the package with a slight bend in them, and you cannot straighten them because they're cast metal, which means you'll snap them. Also, because of the plate's thickness, the screws that come with it, and the actual screw depth, you're only getting a few threads down into the slide itself, which means it's very possible for those screws to shear off just from recoil because there is no linear cruciform, or lug, if you will. What happens then? Well, you break a screw and your optic's mounted. You may not be aware of it unless you occasionally give it a wiggle, which I highly recommend if you carry an MOS. Or you break both screws eventually and the optic flies off and hits you in the face, and you're surprised and just as surprised as everyone else around you. I have seen that happen quite a few times. In fact, it's happened to me once. Another possibility is because there's a slight bend in the plate, every time you pull the trigger, that plate flexes against the screw heads and eventually breaks the screw heads off, or the plate will snap at the screw wells, which I've had happen to me. Not ideal. Glock is probably aware of this issue because I've seen it just my personal guns as well as seen it happen in classes. I can't think of any way how they wouldn't be aware of it, but Glock's motto, as I've said in videos in the past, is you, you'll buy it anyway. I love Glocks, don't get me wrong. However, I think the MOS is very conservative. It's a first good attempt out, but it's not something that you should seriously consider for duty carry or personal self-defense carry unless you absolutely have to. Enter modular optic systems aftermarket options, specifically the Agency Arms AOS. I always wanted a Glock 34, but I always wanted a Glock 34 without the traditional casket cut, which came on all generations until the Gen 5. The Gen 5 came with no casket cut. However, it only came in an MOS, which at the time was some kind of cosmic joke on me. I don't think it was aimed at me personally, not going to be that arrogant about it, but it definitely hurt my feelings. But then Agency developed the AOS, and I saw a light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, and being able to get the Glock 34 that I wanted without having to rely on the MOS system. What Agency actually created for me, if you're very curious about it, is their armor stipple pattern, traditional, all the internals are the same, and then they took the 35 or the 34 Gen 5 and ported it for me, and it's the bone saw package if you're curious about that. But specifically, this is an MOS that now has the Agency Arms AOS system on it, which means it's a modular optic system that is greatly improved over Glock's MOS system. You might be asking yourself, what makes the AOS superior to the Glock MOS? Well, they put at least 3 minutes more of thought into it, which is kind of being facetious, if you will, but technically correct. At least 3 minutes more, probably much more time than that. In fact, I'm almost positive of it. It has 3 screwed hard points into the slide itself. So instead of 2 screws, I've got 3. One's better. I also have irons priority on a steel plate. The iron sights sit on the plate itself, and you can have irons forward or irons rear, depending on whatever your heart desires. And the plate is going to end up sitting lower than the MOS and almost as low as a traditional milled gun. You add all those things together and you get a superior optic mounting solution that can be put on a Glock MOS. So if you have a Glock MOS and you've had those issues, you've got 2 options. You can seek an aftermarket plate option, which there are plenty of options out there, or if you're sending a gun to agency anyway, you might as well have them turn your MOS into an AOS. You don't have to get cool guy stuff done to your gun in order to turn an MOS into an AOS. That's not something you have to do. You can sit it in and just get the AOS work itself done. Slide will come back, no problem. So there's no change whatsoever except for getting rid of the MOS system and adopting the AOS system. And of course you use your plates for whatever optics that you happen to want or whatever optics are coming along. Purchasing officers, or for those of you in law enforcement who are looking for duty gun options or trying to get away from the MOS system, Agency is going to warranty their slide work to the same level that Glock would warranty the slide. So you're not losing anything as far as warranty coverage goes, if that's a concern that your administration has. Also, if you contact Agency Arms directly, they can put you in touch with other agencies who've already had the work done, MOS to AOS, and have the guns working on duty in an official capacity. Right now I'm using basically one of 3 guns anytime I'm shooting. I'm using this, or I'm using one of the Sage Dynamics Edition Glock 45s. I had wanted this gun for so long, I find myself right now at least shooting this one a little bit more because it's exactly what I wanted. I always wanted a 34C. I did not want to take the traditional coffin cut and put a C barrel in that. I wanted exactly what I got. So I'm putting a lot of time on this, and I'm working it into my general practice. And I'm putting this through the same abuse that I'd put through, I should say use. I wouldn't say abuse. I'm not purposely trying to break things. But the same level of manipulations are going to take place on this gun that I would do on any gun. A lot of one-hand manipulations off of the optic just for, you know, working malfunction drills and stuff like that, just my general shooting. And I shoot one-handed a lot because I believe it's a very important skill. So there's a lot of manipulations taking place off that optic, and it's a solid system. This is not a review because I am sponsored by Agency Arms. It's more of an informational video to let you know that this is ultimately, if you were going to turn an MOS into an AOS, this is what you're going to end up with. So because I'd had some questions about it, people knew it was possible, but there isn't a lot of evidence of it out there. There's plenty of people who've had their guns done, but not necessarily people who are going to post them on Instagram, especially at the official level, law enforcement agencies that have done work. That's not something they're necessarily going to put out there. So I decided to go ahead and do a video on this specific gun because this is the first MOS to AOS I personally own. And I'm probably going to take my other MOS guns and have them converted to AOS as well because it's such a superior system, and it's nice to know that I'm not stuck with MOS or stuck if I don't want to be with an aftermarket plate. Keep in mind there are really good options for aftermarket plates. You don't have to get a Agency Arms AOS, however, it gives you everything that you're probably going to want in a plate in a total package, and it's going to be modular looking forward. That doesn't mean these other companies can't produce plates as well, and there are some good options out there. My personal recommendation would be if you're going to have a gun done by agency anyway, especially if you want to convert over for an MOS, this is the way to go. Or if you have an MOS and it's just sitting around collecting dust because you've broken plates with it and you're just frustrated with it, now you have a solution to get it fixed and do any other enhancements that you want to do at the same time. I'm Aaron Cowell with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.